Well, hi everyone. Welcome to day what is this? Day five, six, five of Tadaima 2025. We're really excited to have you here. My name is Ian Martyn. I am one of the board members here at JAMP, Japanese American Memorial Pilgrimages, which is the organization that puts on Tadaima for you. So if you've been enjoying this programming, please be sure to check us out. Um, Shameless self-promotion, buy our t-shirts. We've got them for all sorts of different generations. Thanks to Kimiko, right? Who's here today. But enough of advertising now. Today we have a very special guest with us today, Dr. Midori Samson. She is a bassoonist, educator, and social worker whose artistic practice integrates music with social justice and healing-centered care. She is a mixed-race Yonsei descendant of Tule Lake and Heart Mountain, holding degrees in music performance and social work from Juilliard and the universities of Texas, Michigan, and Wisconsin. She facilitates arts and healing workshops for communities around the world. She is a professor at the University of Kansas, performs with the Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra, volunteers as a crisis hotline counselor, and is composing her debut album, which investigates her Japanese and Filipino ancestors' trauma and resilience. And you can find out more at her website, midorisamson.com, which I will drop in the chat. Would you like to start, Midori?
I mean, you made me sound super cool. Thank you. And I just wanted to also say that Ian and I have so much in common in terms of like professional career path. I mean, not just Yonsei and not just being part of this community, but backgrounds in music composition, music research, ethnomusicology, like all these cool intersections that happened that we're just learning about because we've recently met through Yonsei activities, but then finding out all these arts connections too. So yeah, I'm happy to talk today. I'll talk a bit about like my methodology and how I'm coming to this project, share a little preview of a few album tracks, and then we'll have a conversation about it. Um, are are we recording? Okay, cool. Yay, thank you. Okay, I'll get started. I am working on my album, as Ian said. This was kind of born out of a few things. I want to get tenure, so the thing that you do as a music professor is make an album, have this major creative output. But I didn't think that the world needed another, like, traditional bassoon album of traditional bassoon works. Also, me being frustrated by, in the classical music field, lack of Asian American storytelling. Usually, our task, like my task as an orchestral bassoon player, is to do the traditions, do Beethoven super well, follow the text of these European composers or now contemporary composers from all over the world. But very rarely are we really telling Asian American stories with this art form. Even if there are plenty of Asian Americans on stage, like a lot of Asian Americans are involved in classical music, but are we really actually telling our own stories? So I wanted my big creative output to be storytelling about my family, real truth telling about my family, and then also related to the context of this Tadaima pilgrimage, what kind of truth telling am I responsible to do right now so that following generations will be able to do their own and also be able to look back on these histories that are not always told, especially I think in classical music. So like Ian said, I come to this with backgrounds in music and social work, which is another reason I wanted to do this project. It's a way for me to merge my two different fields more than I found other ways to do it. So I'll start by sharing This is just a little way that I conceptualize like my methodology. I don't know if anyone here would resonate with the term diasporic longing, but it's certainly something that I think a lot of Asian Americans talk about. Sometimes we can feel like, has America betrayed us, especially in terms of JA history? Are we welcome here? Is this home? But then also, what is the home then? A lot of us have maybe never been to Japan, no connection to Japanese cultural traditions that we know about. So we long for this place that maybe we don't even know or have never been to. What is this longing? And it's because we're in diaspora and we long for this place that should be ours, but maybe was taken from us or doesn't belong to us anymore. Feels like it doesn't belong to us. And so with that, to me, comes this desire to self-heal, which also this came up yesterday in our Yonsei conversation, that how can we do a lot of work in terms of preserving this history, confronting the history of our families, if we aren't prepared to like heal the pain that we also carry from it. So I have this desire to self-heal, my connections to Japan and the Philippines, and also the pain that maybe my family has experienced. I turn all these desires into like a research method, basically, which is how I think of my composition process. Pilgrimage, big word for this organization. I was pretty inspired by this organization and the whole concept of Japanese Americans doing pilgrimage to these important places. But I also cast my pilgrimage net to mean, yes, camp, like yes, a trip to Tule Lake, but also to Hiroshima, where we know there was serious collective trauma for a lot of our ancestors, and broadly just, you know, our broader ancestors, not necessarily bloodline, but like cultural Japanese ancestors. For me, Okayama was a pilgrimage because my family did immigrate from Okayama Prefecture. And then also going to the Philippines. So I go to these places, and when I'm in a pilgrimage, do deep listening, asking things like, what might my ancestors have heard here? And this concept of deep listening comes from a composer named Pauline Oliveros, and she tells us to walk as if our feet have ears. Walk on the land as if we're just listening, like so closely to any kind of evidence of, in my case, my ancestors who might have been here. Alongside that, doing archival research, also inspired by Kimiko and JAMP in general, like what kind of archives do exist, even if they're WRA archives, what do I have access to learn about? And then during that whole process, doing autoethnography, which is the study of oneself. So I'm trying to observe myself, my reaction in these places, and then study my own reaction as, what does this mean for broader society? What does this mean for my relationship in broader society? That then becomes music composition, and you'll see some visuals, some altar composition as well that go with my pieces. And then while I'm doing this methodology, these are some guiding questions that also I encourage you, like if you're interested in, you know, reflecting on these things, asking yourself these things. What might my ancestors have heard in this place? Or what do I hear in this place? What sounds might have terrified them here? Or what sounds might have comforted them? What do my ancestors' trauma, resilience, and memories sound like? I have no idea, but what if I can like recreate what those sound like? What do my own memories and resilience and pain sound like? And then how do I feel in this place? What does that feeling of me being here sound like? I included some images from my pilgrimages from Hiroshima last year and this summer too. I went for the 80th anniversary ceremonies. And yeah, so just I'm looking at in this one like symbology of the significance of a crane, a peace symbol like that. I'm looking at the place that exists, what is a remnant of the past, what is new, and then capturing it all on this little humble microphone that has been my tool the whole way. Doing archival research, doing my best hiragana writing, looking through texts and really slowly translating them, learning about survivor testimonies, looking at archives and treasures like this. These are from Okayama, so along the way, bringing ancestors with me. I don't know where they were exactly, but I know that twice great grandma was from Okayama City, so maybe she was here. And then this is my Nisei grandmother as a little girl. So, yeah, bringing her with me. She never went to Japan, so a way of bringing her home. And then these are from Tule Lake, which is mostly land now. Not much remnants unless you look hard. But so I'm looking at these places, and I'll share some audio too, just a little sound clip that you'll hear in my track. I hope you can hear that. I hope you heard it. It's just wind, natural sounds, but to me, I guess proof of life, proof of survival. Maybe a sound that was familiar to the people that I know were here. Tule Lake has the iconic prison, which we got to go into, and I took some audio there too, which became like the white noise basis of my track about Tule Lake. And it's really subtle and really simple, but there's a couple of like drops that happen. Or like what always made me mad at first about this track was I can hear my dad breathing in the background. But again, like I have to let these sounds emerge. Proof of life, proof that like we went back there. And that can become music to me. Visit to the one barrack that's still at Tule Lake, and I was really fascinated by the shells that are all over. I think Tule Lake like used to be a lake bed or something. So all these little shells, and then part of the autoethnography piece is getting on the ground and playing with these. What if my grandma also played with these shells? What if these, what could these have been? What do these represent? So I took some audio of sprinkling these around. What do they sound like when I interact with them? And then this was a real treasure. Finding this little alcohol bottle at Tule Lake felt so symbolic because of what we know about, alcoholism and addiction and how it it manifested as a trauma response. And it just, I know that this like has very personal meaning in my family and probably in other families too. But finding this little bottle, collecting audio of what it sounded like to kick around, my dad and I kicked it back and forth a few times, and that was really compelling music that happened. So all of these are sounds that you'll hear in my track, but I just wanted to give some like visual context for the music as well. So that is my methodology, my process. Now I'll show some of the album. The album is called Conversations with the Ancestors I Never Got to Meet. And it's about me investigating the gaps in my knowledge, the things that we were maybe too ashamed or embarrassed to talk about, but me trying to fill in gaps and tell stories using the little breadcrumbs that I can access. Right now, it's 3 tracks. I think it's going to be 12 tracks, but right now it's 3. I'm finishing a couple more right now about the Philippines, but I'll talk about these first 3 today because they're the closest related to the week and the topic. I'll start with this one, and I'll play about half of the music. They're in a visual environment, and then I'll talk about what we're hearing and looking at. pause it there. That's about half of this track. It's also not complete. I think I'm going to evolve this a little bit more with bassoon and with other elements, but this is the vibe. I'll read about this. This is my liner note about the track. This is called Okayama de Kugatsu. I never met my twice great-grandparents. My grandmother never spoke to me about them, her grandparents. My father has a single, very distant memory of his great-grandfather, an old man near the end of his life, pacing around the family farm. Yet I feel an unbreakable tie for Frank, Yasuichi, and Koe Takayama, my Issei ancestors. This track and visual environment honors them. The little I know about them, their migration story, how I use this Butsudan altar to honor them in death, and what I experienced during my pilgrimage returns to their birthplace of Okayama. Frank arrived in the United States in September 1906 from Okayama-ken. I imagine him on the boat, the SS Shawmut, for weeks as he crossed the Pacific from Akai-Wagun all the way to Seattle. Was he nervous? Could he speak a single word of English? His birthday was only 3 days after his arrival on the West Coast, so did he celebrate alone? Did he have any cash for a beer? I wish I could have been there to give him a birthday toast. The best I can do now is a shot of sake at my altar, a daily offering. Was he scared, or did he feel nothing but excitement and naivete? He certainly couldn't have known what was ahead, that one day he would be imprisoned by the very country he was so eager to enter. 7 years after his arrival, my twice great-grandmother Koe followed. I wonder if she was a picture bride. She fit the demographic, to be sure. 13 years younger, traveling to a farmer husband who she never met, from the same hometown who had been saving every penny to support her. Together, Frank and Koe built a life in the margins. They mourned the death of a baby boy. They endured the early loss of their eldest daughter, my great-grandmother. They survived the grinding pressure of immigration, forced assimilation, cultural erasure, and eventually imprisonment at Camp Tule Lake. From inside the camp, Frank was drafted by the U.S. military like so many other Japanese-American men, summoned to serve the very country that had stripped him of his freedom during its Pacific War against his homeland. According to camp records, Koe taught music at camp. Is my musicianship a credit to hers? Does she visit me through music and I've never noticed? My intense longing to answer these questions guides this music called Okayama September. My pilgrimage to Okayama Prefecture brought me to Korakuen Garden near Koe's birthplace. Sitting peacefully in a breeze by the garden's lake, I looked at the sky to start my conversation with the ancestors I never got to meet. Then 2 turtles docked on the shore next to me, like migrant ships in their own pond. First, there was a big one, and then another smaller one followed, seemingly 7 years later. They arrived for me and posed for my camera. Their message was clear. They saw me, recognized me, and welcomed me back to Okayama. I used to think nothing was sweeter than a Japanese person saying "Okaeri nasai," welcome home. But now I know that 2 turtles saying it is even sweeter. The sounds and visuals in my altar are for them. The musical track uses piano to evoke the nostalgia of that dusty piano in the basements of so many immigrant households. Interspersed are sounds of Okayama in September, field recordings of birds and bugs collected at Korakuen Garden. The repeated rhythm throughout invites you to the undulating inner workings of an immigrant ship crossing the Pacific. Visually, you see the only photograph that I have of Frank and Koe, unearthed from a public archive that seems to say, look how American these Japanese immigrants became. Mixed among that photo are other evidence I have of them, their names on census records, marriage certificates, draft cards. The rest of the altar consists of things I hope they accept as offerings. Coins from Japan, my train ticket to Okayama, foods that maybe they loved, soil from the shore of the Turtles Lake. I cherish these memory breadcrumbs because the rest have been lost to time, family pain, and the covert erasure of Asian American history. But through this sound and visual offering of diasporic memory, I invite you into this space where their immigrant story is remembered. Let's go to the next. I'll go to the next one, and this one is about Tule Lake. pause it there and read my liner note about this one. Much of this will be stuff you all already know because you're experts in this history too, but I included here for education purposes. Tule Lake, 1942. When President Roosevelt issued Executive Order 9066 in February 1942, all people of Japanese descent on the west coast of the U.S. were forced from their homes, allowed to bring only what they could carry. Labeled falsely as threats to national security, they had to board buses to unknown destinations, take assigned ID numbers, and live in makeshift wooden barracks. The WRA branded this as a protective measure for Japanese Americans. The WRA used propaganda and euphemisms to justify its racist actions. In total, over 125,000 Japanese American individuals were incarcerated until the end of World War II. Among them were my Issei great-grandparents, Nisei aunts, uncles, and great-grandmother, and Marjorie, my 7-year-old grandmother. They were among the 18,000 people sent to Camp Tule Lake in Northern California. As the commemorative plaque at Tule Lake now reads, they were confined there behind barbed wire and guard towers without charge, trial, or establishment of guilt. In May 2022, I traveled with my Yonsei father to Tule Lake, where the barracks once stood. This work, Tule Lake 1942, is a meditative soundscape built from field recordings collected during that pilgrimage. It felt particularly special that our pilgrimage occurred on the day of the 80th anniversary of the camp opening. Unbeknownst to us, we scheduled our return on this hugely important day. It felt beyond coincidence, more like that we were answering a call from the ancestors that we didn't know we'd received. Engaging in deep listening, letting my feet become ears as I walked, I asked, what did my ancestors feel in this place? What sounds were painful or traumatic for them? Were there any sounds that comforted them? These questions guided my selection of audio materials: the white noise of a prison cell, keys clanking on a chain link fence, a vodka bottle tinkling on concrete, children laughing, birds singing, wind rushing through the tall grass. Woven into the audio landscape is distorted musical clips from War Relocation Authority propaganda. Its sounds manipulated and fractured, reclaimed from their original intent by me to shift control of the storytelling back to my family. Acoustic bassoon threads through the soundscape, a tribute to my family's camp intake. Their lives were reduced to the ID number 15773, so I limit myself to scale degrees 1, 5, 7, and 3 in the key of A flat minor. The work overall mimics the tuning of a radio dial, referencing the camp's strict ban on radios, believed to be potential tools for espionage. Like many Japanese American families, we didn't speak of this history. My grandmother carried her memories in silence, burdened by decades of pressure to erase her Japanese identity. She was apparently even a little angry that my parents gave me a Japanese first name. She feared it would put me in danger and ruin my life. The visual environment of this piece reflects the intergenerational effects of that silence and shame. Alcoholism, gambling, hoarding, struggles that many Japanese American families might still carry. I create candlelit altars in this visual environment where the track lives, where my ancestors can rest with their vices, free from barbed wire. And I'll go to the last one, which is about Hiroshima. pause it there because I've been talking too long, but I'll share the last liner note about this one. This is Hiroshima de Hachigatsu. What if August 6, 1945 had been a normal day in Hiroshima? This track imagines an alternate world where the atomic bomb was never dropped, where the people of Hiroshima experienced a beautiful, ordinary day. Inspired by my research residency at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum, I use autoethnography, deep listening, archives, and survivor testimonies to construct a soundscape that invites healing through speculative fiction. Rather than focusing on the perpetrators of the devastation, this work centers the lives of Hiroshima's people, their routines, their intimacies, their interrupted futures. I pilgrimaged to Hiroshima in August 2024 and 2025. Though I initially set out to research the artistic contributions of atomic bomb survivors, I felt compelled to create a piece of music in response to my learnings. The result is Hiroshima August, this work for distorted bassoon and soundscape. My first exposure to Hiroshima's history was as a teenager during my 8th grade class's visit to Japan. While some may think 13 years old is too young to know about the atomic bomb, being Japanese American means we don't get the privilege of not knowing the details of it. But I remember feeling caught between two narratives. One perspective that spoke to the horror inflicted on the people of my heritage, and another perspective that justified the bombing as necessary to end World War II. 18 years later, I still grapple with these internal conflicts, and those conflicts only deepen my longing to answer unanswerable questions. At the Peace Memorial Museum, I realized how little I understood about Hiroshima beyond its tragedy. American narratives often center the mechanics of the bomb, the plane, the uranium, the pilot. The museum instead focuses on the victims, their lives before the bombing, full humanity. In response, I wanted to reimagine August 6, 1945, not as a day marked by destruction, but as just another summer day in Hiroshima. This track's visual environment presents a fictional diary by a mother describing simple, everyday tasks, dropping her children off at school, listening to animal sounds, gardening, dancing alone to the radio. These details draw from real survivor testimonies I heard at the museum, fragments of daily life that existed before history was rewritten by violence. I was particularly moved by wartime journal entries from Hiroshima school children on display in the museum. Writing this diary became a personal act of healing for me, a way to practice my Japanese language skills and acknowledge traditions passed down by my own bloodline ancestors, like pumpkin sushi and performing mimisoji, the tender act of ear cleaning between loved ones. I didn't realize that these were traditions handed to me from my ancestors. I'd previously assumed I didn't inherit anything Japanese, but I discovered these things during my pilgrimage, my family traditions I had never before recognized as Japanese. Surrounding the diary in this visual environment are orizuru origami cranes and streetcar tickets symbolizing Hiroshima's post-war peace and reconstruction. The music in this track incorporates field recordings I collected at the bomb's hypocenter on a Monday morning in August 2024. Crows, cicadas, people going about their days, captured precisely between 7:30 a.m. and 8:15 a.m., the minutes survivors recall as the all-clear between routine air raids and the bomb's detonation. Distorted bassoon playing evokes earth and groundedness, a reminder that every step in Hiroshima passes near bones and ashes. The piece concludes with the sound of the peace bell striking 7 times, reference to the numbers in 15773 and connecting to the previous track, Tule Lake, 1942. A low D flat is articulated 49 times in the track, honoring 49 documented victims named Midori, who are known to have died in the bombing. Though not my bloodline ancestors, I feel a connection to these Midoris. They remind me of my bond to this country and its history. Though my bloodline ancestors were not from Hiroshima, I feel a diasporic longing to know the city's history. I think about my Yonsei ancestors who were in the USA by 1945. What did they think when they heard the news about their neighboring prefecture? Did they have loved ones still in Japan who were affected? In the end, Hiroshima August became a sort of elegy, but one that strives to be joyous, nostalgic, and ultimately healing. By imagining an alternate story, I hope to honor those who died and survived and convey their message of peace while also envisioning the ordinary, uninterrupted lives they deserve to live. That's what I'll preview. I'm happy to, Ian, have a conversation now with reactions, questions, whatever. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your music and your project with us. It's really cool. I've had the privilege of having a few weeks to listen to it myself. But I think for everyone experiencing it for the first time, it's a very uh for me it was very self-reflective. I'm I'm very interested. You talked a bit at the beginning about how this has been a very like autoethnographic process for you, and I'm wondering kind of also along the lines of something you brought up with having our own Asian American voices reflected more in just the sort of like general classical music compositional landscape, but also you know, just having these pieces be programmed. I wonder what your thoughts of are of like encouraging more people to use autoethnographic processes to explore uh, composition, right, or creation of other media, in sort of like being able to bring more Asian American voices to prominence, right, to to just the public.
Hmm. I think it's an amazing research method. I wouldn't engage. I mean, I love it. I think it's amazing. I take a lot of inspiration from Black feminism, who really like Black feminist scholars really like paved the way with this research method because um, there was a recognition of like we are not in the research canon. Like our stories are not in the data, and so how are we going to put it in? Well, we are the data. We are the example. So I wonder if this is what we have to do, because if like we always point out when we talk about like camp history and like Japanese American history, like the descendants are often the ones doing the work. So we are the primary source, right? Or we have the connection to the Nisei primary source. I think it is an amazing method. It's not without its criticisms, of course, but and the fact that there can be healing and like personal connection with it too is really, I think it's the way. I love it as a method.
Yeah, that's awesome. And kind of along the same lines, I know you've said that you're also a social worker. You do social work, and I'm curious how um, like this autoethnographic concept has, if that has like intersected at all with your social work and what you bring there, or like how you combine them basically.
I mean, I wouldn't have known about this research method if not for a field like social work that uses this as a qualitative method. So, I mean, it came from that, and the fact that social work uses like participatory research methods where you're having participants in a study actually engage with like artistic materials or like engage with identity work as the data. This is so a social work person centered method. When I was studying social work at the University of Michigan, I worked with Donna Nagata, who is our friend, who is Japanese American psychology researcher. And a lot of this stuff emerged from that study with her because a lot of our work together was talking about our own family stories and the fact that that was data. So yeah, it's totally a credit to social work. Also, because in music school we don't learn. Maybe you did, in musicology school, but like performance school we don't learn research methods. We don't learn how to read. We learn how to operate a musical instrument, and that's amazing too. Um, but yeah, if I hadn't have been trained as a social worker too, I don't think I would have discovered this way of unleashing musical creativity. Yeah.
Makes sense. That's really cool. I'm very much interested in intersectionality between disciplines. So hearing that you're able to pull so much from your social work background into your compositional practice, I think is really cool
Hmm.
that you're able to combine those things. Because in all honesty, I like something that I struggle with in my own compositional practice is like how to integrate who I am, like as a, um, I call myself Hapa because that's the term I grew up with, but as a mixed race Japanese American person, right? Like how do I integrate my own background, whether that's my Japanese American side or my, I'll call it my Mediterranean American
Hmm.
side from my dad, right? How I combine those things and integrating them into my music has been always a struggle. So to see you be able to do this and really represent not only sort of the Japanese and Japanese American experience in your work, but also to take something so personal and turn it into something so deep and fascinating that the public can also explore and learn from, right? Like is really something that I feel like is inspiring me to try to maybe do something like this of my own, and I'll see where that goes. But it's really cool, I think, that you're able to take both your family's roots in Okayama, but also, their history in America, being forced to Tule Lake, right, and their experiences there, and then hearing you, um, make these field recordings with things that you're actually experiencing, like you were talking about, like kicking around the alcohol bottle, but then how that also relates to alcoholism, right? Is it's really nice, I think, that you're connecting musically to your ancestors' experience in this way. Um, I know something that we've talked about a lot in the Yonsei group that we're both in, and something I believe Kimiko you said is that we're one of the last generations that has really had been able to access or to know really the Nisei, right? Like I didn't know my Issei great grandparents. They passed before I was born. But I knew my grandmother, my Nisei grandmother, very well. And so I think it's really inspiring to see this work because it's sort of like um, a way of passing along the information or just the experience of knowing these people to future generations, to the Gosei, the Rokusei, the Nanasei, right? I don't know if there are any out there, but maybe, right? Um, but yeah, that's very cool. I know we talked a bit of in the group when we first met about our shared connection to Oregon, because both of our families and you, being from Oregon, right?
Hmm.
I'm just kind of curious how what was that like for you, not only from your family's perspective, but you as a Japanese American to grow up in and live in Oregon, right? And what that was like.
I didn't know how cool it was to be Asian American until I left the West Coast. Like I was just because I was in the Japanese immersion program as a little kid, K to 12 learning Japanese in public school. Um, and so I was around a lot of mixed kids, a lot of camp descendants, just access to Asian food, access to Asian culture, leisure activities. And then I moved to a bunch of different states and then ended up in the Midwest in Illinois. And like right now, I live in Kansas. I work in Wisconsin. And I didn't know how miraculous it was to be Asian until I was like the only one in the room every time I was in a room. And yeah, adored growing up in Oregon because I had access to it. And now that I'm landlocked, now that I'm really like a minority, I just feel really privileged to have had access to that. And then also, when I'm like on my way to Japan or on my way to the Philippines, I'm thinking about, wow, this journey must have been horrible 120 years ago. What was this journey like? Now I'm whining about the plane ride from Portland to Tokyo, but like what would that have been like if I had to take a boat? Um, I don't know. Having roots there is really special and I'm really grateful for it, and also getting exposed to the history that is mine. And then like kind of losing it when I left the West Coast. Now I cherish it even more that I'm not there.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for sharing. That's it's a really interesting perspective. I've never moved to a landlocked state. I've lived my whole life in California. So hearing what that's like is very interesting, right? Where you go from um like in my case, I'm from Los Angeles, right? Very high density of, or I'm not going to say it's high density, but comparatively high density of Japanese Americans to other places. But then to hear your experience of going from someplace that was higher density to now, as you said, being the only person in the room, it's very fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, if anyone has any questions at this point, I'd love to open the floor. You're welcome to type answers in the chat, or you can just unmute and ask. But I'd love to welcome any questions that anyone has, or discussion points, or anything really.
I just wanted to say thank you. It was a really different way of looking at things, of looking at a pilgrimage or looking back at where your ancestors came from or what the experience was like in camp, because we have a lot of visuals, photographs and artworks, and there's a lot of literature, letters that were written. But I actually never thought of, I mean, it was just a new way of thinking about the experience through sounds and you making music, which was really interesting. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank
I don't
you.
have a question, but because it's kind of a whole new thing to me.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say thank you because it gives you a different perspective
Mm.
and
Thank
something
you.
else to think about.
That's great. That's great feedback to hear. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Well, I'd like to thank you as well. I think I feel connected to you because I was actually conceived in Tule Lake. My brothers and sisters were all born in Hood River, and my family originated in Okayama. I also
Oh my gosh.
studied music at a conservatory, and it's just so evocative what you do, and you are so amazingly modest about what you've accomplished. So I think you're a wonderful artist, a gifted individual, and I'm so proud to think of you as a representative of us. So thank you very much. I'm honored to know you, Midori-san.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wow, thank you. I feel like, are we sisters? Like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we're meeting now. Thank you for saying all that. Thank you.
Hi, Midori. I'm Emiko. I also feel a bit connected to you because my grandparents were from Oregon, and my other set of grandparents ended up in their families ended up in Tule Lake. So,
Wow.
having been there myself, also, I, as Janice mentioned, I really appreciated the audio component of it, and I was wondering how you see this work moving forward. If you How you're going to expand it? Is there going to be a way for people to experience it in real life?
Yeah. Wow, thank you. What an exciting question because I don't know. It's gonna be a full album. None of what you've seen has been to my producer yet, so the audio is, I think, not even the full experience of what it will be. So it will soon. Once I'm done with 12 tracks, I'm working on a track also about Nagasaki, where I went for the 80th anniversary. I'm working on tracks that are based on visits to where my family came from in the Philippines. And I'm also going to Heart Mountain, where I had some ancestors. So more needs to be written, but once it's all done, I want to release the album like on platforms, just audio, but then I want it to live also this audio visual element where you can see the altars at the same time. I imagine it being like a gallery installation too. I would love to do an installation where you can actually like walk up to the altar, the physical one, and like have the track playing in a earphone or something. And then also, when I worked with Donna Nagata on all of this, I set out to, I'm kind of like experimenting with this as a healing methodology so that I can work with other descendants to do a similar process. So like going to like an in-person pilgrimage at Tule Lake or Heart Mountain and like working with other descendants, going on deep listening walks, going on like field recording walks, and then making some kind of like group track, seeing what kind of thing emerges when we do collective healing through the sound work too. Yeah, I think it's gonna take multiple forms. I hope it does, because the sound part is the language that I'm comfortable speaking. So I hope that this can be like a legacy I do for our community, I guess. That's what I'm imagining.
Super exciting. How do we follow what you're doing?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm not good at this part yet, but feel free to I'll share like the link to the homepage for the album so far. So it's here, and that I'll keep adding tracks to it. I have a website. You feel free to like follow me on Instagram, but I am mostly just silly there, but I love to stay connected. So I put my handle in the chat too. So feel free to stay connected. And thank you everybody for all the um, affirmations and stuff in the chat too. I appreciate reading all the comments.
I don't know if there's a question here, but when you mentioned the ear cleaning, that was also like immediately like that's a thing my mom did. I don't even know if she knows that it's a Japanese tradition. But it like it's like immediately evocative. It immediately feels like comforting to me, like remembering like lying my head on my mom's lap as a child. And similarly, in May, I was in Japantown in San Jose, and I went to the museum, and they were doing like a little, like, I don't know, it was like some kind of event. And one of the things that was there, I don't know if it was on my desk for a long time. There's like a zine that a handful of folks have made a few issues of. Um, and I like kind of like read it and like looked up the authors and stuff. And one of the authors has a blog post about a tradition of, apparently a Japanese tradition of like walking with people as they leave and like standing outside their house and waving goodbye. And like that is a thing that also like we totally did every time we visited my grandparents. Anytime they visited us, we would like go outside and wave at them. And like I called my mom after I read it and like shared it with her, and I was like, "Did you know this was a Japanese thing?" Like, and she had no idea. She's just like, "I always felt like that was what you were supposed to do." And like, it's just like, so I'm Yonsei, my mom's Sansei, my grandparents were, Nisei, born in California, and were like young adults during incarceration. And there's just so many things that like we feel so disconnected from traditions, and then it's like, oh, we actually had these things. And I don't know, like I think that's been one of the most powerful things about connecting with people in this way. Like it would have taken me, I could have gone the whole rest of my life not knowing about like the ear cleaning thing being Japanese, and it just feels like such a gift to know that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like exactly what this is supposed to be for. I mean, because my journeys to all these places, it's been like constant education about you got this from this, you're like this because of this thing. This tradition so belongs to you and me and all of us, even though we didn't know. It was like a gift given to us. So it totally, yeah, that's kind of the point. And then during that process, I'm like, how do I preserve this feeling? And how do I capture this musically, visually, with text so that maybe somebody else can have the effect. Oh my God, it just happened. This is the point. Thank you, Emily.
It jumped out to me when you were scrolling through, just like reading that sentence. Like I was like,
Mhm.
what? So
Wow. Wow.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's really fascinating. Something that thinking about being, from a later like Yonsei, right? Later generation, um, more time from the actual immigration from Japan. It's just interesting how much we all have these different sort of pieces of the puzzle, right? There's this whole thing, um, I don't know, body that makes up what it is to be like, to be Nikkei, right? And we all have these different pieces of the puzzle. And by connecting together like this, whether it's, over like a musical or multimedia project like yours, Midori, or just talking in these groups like our Yonsei group, we all find out that we're all carrying more pieces of this puzzle than we may have realized. And I think that like realization, at least for me over the past few years, has been very powerful. Like, this is what, this is who I am. These all of these different things make up who I am, but it's something that we can sort of like bond over, right? Or just think about. Like, it's just very fascinating.
Well, I do have more of a comment than a question, but it's amazing to me how much what you were saying mirrors in a way the other session that we had talking about literature. And Heidi Kim, who is a professor out at Chapel Hill, was explaining to us that when a traumatic event happens, there's like different phases that literature, but now it feels like it's just art or perception or how you express yourself. And so when you're talking about imagining like for your Hiroshima piece, if the bombing hadn't happened, so and it kind of goes into that the fantastical, like let's think about, because you weren't in that place, you weren't in camp, so you don't have those direct memories. And that's kind of the point that we're at right now. So I'm just like fascinated to think of, and if anybody out there knows the answer, but what other ways are we doing this that we're not even realizing that this is what we're doing, where we're past the point of, we don't have the firsthand information, so we have to use our imaginations and come at it from a different perspective. I don't know. I don't know if there's other things that you all have heard of, but I also think it's really interesting of trying to put yourself almost literally in the shoes of your ancestors.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I mean, my angle to it is like that idea comes from basically like exposure therapy. Like, what's a safe way to expose yourself? And then it increases empathy, like increases resilience, all these things. So that was my way into it. But certainly, I mean, the fact that other, disciplines, other artists, other thinkers are talking about it is proof that like everybody has a way into this somehow, and we all get to engage with it somehow when we're ready and when we want to, with whatever medium makes sense for us. Yeah, beautiful.
I think the speculative part too is like a huge thing of like the in-person pilgrimage. Having just gone to my first one in
Mm.
October, I was at Crystal City, which is one of the camps my grandma was in, and like you can't help but like stand there and be like, what was her experience here? you know, and like what was, you know, everybody's experience. And, you know, she talked a lot about being in Poston. We didn't know until I started doing family research that she was at Crystal City at all. So like we don't, like, it's all speculation. Like nobody knows, even the people who'd done more family research like in a generation before me, like she just never talked about it. So like, you know, it's just, that's what it is. And
Mhm.
I don't know. I think there's like something special about that, but also like, you know, like we just don't know. We'll never know.
Yeah, and it can be really devastating. There's a lot of grief that comes with like I just don't know. Um, and I guess yeah, my healing method for that was like, well, I can try to fill in gaps and maybe I'm wrong, but I can still be comforted by it being a possibility. Um, I don't know if my twice great grandmother was actually in that garden, but isn't it like so much more comforting to me to think maybe she was?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
At Kintsugi last year, I was in a workshop and this was like right after I found out about the Crystal City of it all. So I asked a question about it and like just kind of like, what do you do with all this information that you like, you know, like you don't have answers for? And I don't even remember who the presenter was, but I like immediately wrote it in my notebook. I'm making a quilt that says this. And she said, for some of this, you just need to allow yourself to be haunted by, you know, like all these things that you know and you don't know, and like everything in between. And that, I don't know, that really feels like this work that we're all doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I
Wow.
think it's really difficult. I know, I mean, I'm a Sansei and I was born in camp in Rower. So my mother did talk about it. My father didn't talk about it. And he died relatively young, he was 63. But my mother did talk about her experiences. Um, none of which, of course, were very pleasant, I don't think. But I'm sorry that I didn't think to ask a lot of questions that I could have asked and didn't think to ask at the time. And the same with my mother's, my grandparents, my mother's parents, who were also in Rower, as were some of her sisters and brothers and my father's brothers and sisters. But I wish, I mean, I'm not haunted by it, but I wish I had asked a lot of questions. And had I thought about them at the time, I would have known a lot more. So that's kind of hard too, I think. You know, that you didn't ask those questions and you had a source. I don't know, you know. And I guess just they do have recordings of people who were growing up, you know, or who were young in the camps and do have memories. So that's a good resource. But yeah, I have regrets that I didn't think about some of the questions I could have asked.
Yeah, I think a lot about the questions and the things that I wish I had said, like to my grandma, like, and my grandpa, just like that I'm proud of them, and that like there were no like right or wrong decisions in like such a complicated time, and like that I'm just like so grateful that they survived these hardships and like went on to, you know, in a lot of ways like thrive. Like we are, like we would not exist had they not been able to at least somewhat you know, recover and move on with their lives. Like to, you know, even though like obviously like there's still a lot of trauma and a lot of, you know, just complicated, you know, legacies of incarceration, it's also just like such an accomplishment to like have a family after that, like, or through it, you know, any of that. It's like, wow.
And on the other hand, too, like if we had asked, I got in trouble for asking a lot of things. Like
Of course. Yeah.
I'm only making this piece because most people are gone now, and I don't know if I could have and should have made this when people were alive. So that is complicated too. But a lot of questions I did ask, and I kind of got in trouble. So maybe, yeah, the comfort is like maybe it's impossible to know, and maybe I get to ponder, and that's where the healing and the knowing comes from. Me filling in gaps that probably couldn't have been filled in. We all get to do that, I guess.
I suffer from the opposite trauma. My family inundated me with their stories. I became like someone who had to absorb their pain. And so now I'm this receptacle. And when I wrote my book, then I became almost like a target because of the things that I revealed about their trauma. So there is a responsibility, and then I sometimes, maybe it's a blessing not to know, uh, because there is so much pain, and especially among, the Nikkei, because they don't feel free to express their pain outside the family. So the family became almost the refuge, but also um, a place of great trauma for me, because even though I was born in Minidoka, I don't remember much about it. Right. So I was actually, what they said was the flower on the manure pile. So the Issei doted on me. But yeah, and in some respects, the Issei were liberated from some of the pain of having to live in the economic uncertainties of their labor when they were working on their farms, right? So they had more time, in a sense, to spend with me. But once we were released to Chicago, then it became a race to become economically solvent. And so those pressures were horrendous, right? And then the adjustment from living in a rural setting to living in a urban setting was quite, I think, difficult. And so the whole family unit changed. And I don't know to this day that my brothers and sisters, most of whom have passed, really quite ever recovered from all that. So I think there's a pain in knowing that somehow we are quite restored to wholeness. And in fact, I don't know whoever will be. So I think it's part of being human, this suffering and this search for meaning. And that's why we have art. And that's why we have Tadaima. So thank you for letting me express that to you.
Lots of love to you. That's amazing. Thank you.
Does anyone have any last minute questions or thoughts?
Just thank you again. It was really wonderful music and a really interesting and different perspective for me anyway. So thank you very much.
Your audio's out.
Yep.
I don't know why you are not on mute. Nope.
Uh-oh.
So weird. Another microphone. Is there next to, there's a little up arrow next to your mic on Zoom. Might let you select a different speaker mic.
Maybe the ancestors are telling you
Yeah.
something, Midori.
Time's up.
Oh no.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's incredible.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Midori, for sharing. I'm sorry the mic tech issues are happening at the end. But yeah, I'd like to thank all of you for coming today to experience this incredible project, and I know I'm looking forward to seeing more pieces as you release them, and seeing how this project evolves, and as you continue to explore this more. So thank you so much for sharing something so personal with all of us today. Um, and thank you all for coming. It's been a pleasure to be here, and yeah, please check out the rest of the Tadaima programming, because we've got programming through Sunday, so we'd love it if you could show up for more. Yeah, Kimiko, do you have anything to?
No, I just wanted to make sure. I saw Midori frantically typing. And I'm like, I want to
Oh,
make
yeah.
sure we're on. I don't want to close the meeting before so Midori, did you have anything else that?
Can you hear me? Any
Yes.
chance?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
so weird. Yeah, I guess ancestors were like, wrap it up, move along. Yeah, I'm putting it in the chat too, but the feedback is so amazing. The personal stories, the fact that this is like resonating in certain ways, that it's allowing us to talk about nuance in so many ways. It's really precious, and I can't thank everybody enough for making time to listen to it, to listen to me talk through it all. Thank you. Amazing. I'm so glad to have you all as my like community and my people. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. And there will be a recording of this up on YouTube. I'll just do some light editing to edit out the ancestors and their hijinks. But we will have that up shortly, and then we'll send a link out to everybody so that you can share it. So share it widely. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.